Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Breaking the Law podcast. If you're have been a listener for a while, thank you for joining us again. If you're new, this is the Breaking the Law podcast, where we talk about how the traditional approach to law is broken and therefore is breaking people. And really want to focus our conversation and dialogues around the idea that there has to be a way for there to be a better law, a better practice of law. And I, for one, am so excited for the conversation that we have planned for you all today for a menagerie of reasons. But one, because one of my favorite people to chat with and also follow on Instagram is here with us today to chat about this concept of professional identity formation. And so before I introduce her, my name is Ashlyn Linskog. I am an attorney and the founder of AB Legal. And I am so excited to be able to share in this conversation with you all. Sam?
My name is Sam Foreman. I'm the founder of Foreman Law. We work with a lot of folks on buying and selling businesses, mergers and acquisitions, not to be confused with murders and anything else.
It's good that we clarify those things.
Yeah. Best part of my life right now is when I get home, my two boys, one of whom is 6 and one is 2, will run very excitedly towards the door that I'm coming in through, not towards
the exit door.
Yeah. And want me to play Monsters with them, which is fabulous. It is the easiest game and there's just squeals of delight and I love it.
So are you like, rah?
Yeah. Yes.
I love that.
I will not do an impersonation here.
Okay, it's good. I
don't know
get
if our
scared
audience
easily.
could handle it. So,
I love that and relate to that, except that when I walk in the door, my 2 oldest are busy doing something and my youngest comes up to me and her new thing is to go, hi-ya! And I'm just getting karate chopped. So different reception, but I think it's out of love.
yes, I'm sure it is.
Yes. So today we have Jordan Carter with us. Jordan, hello. Thank you for being here. Jordan teaches lawyering skills at the University of Kansas School of Law. She is a member of the Professional Identity Formation Committee and Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. Prior to joining KU Law faculty, she was a judicial law clerk for their Honorable James O'Hara at the United States District Court in the District of Kansas. And she was a product liability associate with Shook, Hardy, and Bacon in Kansas City, Missouri. In her spare time, Jordan enjoys reading, pop culture, and exploring Lawrence with her toddler daughter, Charlie. And as I read that, Jordan, for the listeners, because Sam already knows this because I've mentioned it 77 times, Jordan and I went to law school together. And as I read your bio, I'm like, you have accomplished so much. And I feel like it's been a blink of an eye. Did we not graduate law school 5 seconds ago? It's very impressive. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And I hate to break it to you, but it was not a blink of an eye. It's been almost a decade now.
Jason, cut
And
that.
As you know, a lot can happen in a decade.
Jason, leave that in.
A lot can happen in a decade. And
Can I pop in and say the best thing in my life right now is
yes.
that Charlie loves running around our kitchen island dancing to Taylor Swift, Shake It Off, just over and over
Yes.
and over again.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Our go-to songs right now are What Does the Fox Say?
Sure.
And Who Let the Dogs Out? And you know what? I feel like this is one of my great wins as a dad. Boom by POD. So you both look very confused.
I'm
like
going to have to
you have
Google
no idea
that.
what song
I'll
it is.
Google that one.
Just think about really hard rock that would be played over a football highlight video with lots of, impressive tackles.
Is it Here Comes the Boom?
Yeah.
Can
Ready
you
or
sing
not.
it for us?
I could, but I would need to ensure that all recording devices were removed.
Okay,
So-
fine.
And also I couldn't afford the amount of therapy that would take for people to recover from that. So
Ours is our Taylor Swift anthem currently is Bad Blood. I don't know what that says about me or my parenting style, but yeah, my daughter Rosalie, her go-to karaoke move is for sure some Bad Blood. So
also Dracula's favorite song.
Thank you for that, Sam. So, okay, Jordan. So obviously a variety of different things that you've done in your experience. Now at KU Law, molding young legal minds. What a responsibility. In your bio, I talk about this professional identity formation committee. And that's kind of what I want to focus on today as we chat. So I think we have to start at the very beginning. If someone's never heard those words in the context of law or otherwise, what is professional identity formation?
Great question. And I think a lot of people haven't yet heard of this term, but you definitely know the stuff to which it's referring. So I guess in the vaguest terms, professional identity formation, which we call PIF, but
An acronym.
not everyone uses this acronym, is like what it means to be a lawyer. So all of the values and the guiding principles and the practices of being a lawyer. To make it, I think, hopefully a little more clear, our definition at KU that we've been using is a representation of self achieved in stages over time, during which the characteristics, values, and norms of the legal profession are internalized, resulting in an individual thinking, acting, and feeling like a lawyer. So does that explain it? Maybe not. We think of it as like all of the values and behaviors and like how are you actually showing up as a lawyer. So it's stuff like how do you manage your time, how do you dress, how do you find a job that you want to do long term and stay relatively happy, how do you handle interpersonal conflict, how do you manage clients who are going to be totally different from you? How do you pitch yourself to an employer? All of those, oftentimes what we would call soft skills. That is kind of the bucket of stuff we're talking about when we talk about professional identity formation.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think, it's so important. Obviously, you wouldn't be doing the work if you also didn't agree. So that it has value. I think it's interesting. One of the things that I read too, which I thought might reach people who are less able to touch in the squishy side of things, is also this idea that we as lawyers have a responsibility for just general decorum and how do we have like civil dialogue and decorum in a very adversarial type of profession where we are truly, and it depends on what you're doing, but in what I do, I mean, I'm pit against someone else. Someone wins and someone loses usually in the litigation side. And so how do you bring yourself to that authentically and genuinely while also representing your clients to the best interest? And I think it's obviously multifaceted and so many things to think about. But I think when Sam and I were prepping and planning for this, I think a relevant question next, as we talk about what is PIF, is why should we care about it? Why should we talk about it? Why should we implement it? Why is it something that the industry as a whole should start to recognize and care about?
Well, first and foremost, because this industry is comprised of people relating to other people. And so no matter what job you have, you could be sort of the most introverted person. You never want to leave your office, right? You just want to sit and research and write all day. No matter what your lawyer job is, you have to interact with other people. You have to interact with your coworkers. You might be managing people. You're going to be supervising people. You are going to be in court. You're going to have opposing counsel. You're going to have clients. And so the human element, I think, cannot be ignored. And we don't do a great job in law school of preparing for what I would say is like the people side of the profession. I also think that there's this other prong, and we can talk about this this Delta model of competency that I think is really useful, of the process. So we have this professional school where folks go for 3 years and they learn a lot about the law, the doctrinal law, and how to take a law school exam. But then you're sent out to be a professional in the world. And if you have no professional experience, like law school should be a place where you learn some stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe certain people of older generations might disagree, but those skills are not necessarily inherent, right? We talk a lot about like adulting, and for better or worse, you got to learn those skills somewhere.
Right.
And I think law school can be a place where we learn them. So, so there's this prong of process, meaning like, how do you manage your time? How do you manage your work? How do you find a job that you like? All of those pieces that I think are also necessary to getting from being a student to being a self-managed, autonomous professional. There's also, I think, a renewed focus or maybe some more energy behind this because the ABA has recently revised their standards to require law schools to put in place programming surrounding, among other things, professional identity formation. So the ABA has basically said, hey, you gotta do this in law school through like official curriculum or otherwise like mandated programming. So that is another motivator for sure.
Yeah, in that the ABA says do it or else, which, helps, I think, to move the needle probably to some degree and when you're trying to convince someone that this is important work or valuable work. Do you think that was a reaction to, I mean, a million things probably, but just like an increased lack of just wellness in the industry, just, I mean, burnout and mental health and addiction issues and decorum issues and, scandals with lawyers. I mean, do you think the ABA was just like, oh, you got to get these people to figure it out before it gets to this point? Like, you guys got to learn how to beat people on your own before you come into this profession and ruin it for the rest of us. Like, do you think that the ABA was like, they were reacting to something?
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are living in, as you know, complicated times.
Yeah.
And over the past decade, there's been a bunch of different factors. And we've had, I think, more conversations about how all of these inputs are affecting law students. And you guys, I mean, you can tell me from the employer side, we also have gotten feedback from employers that law students don't always necessarily have these professional skills when they are coming out of law school and starting their jobs.
I'd be curious on your experience and then I'll speak to my own.
Yeah, it was crazy to me. So, before I'm at where I'm at now, I did a lot of young lawyer training, and young lawyers, and I use the word young, like new lawyers, and they were also young, but they had so much to offer in terms of perspective and thought and efficiency and all of those types of things. But I will acknowledge that there was some discrepancy or a lack of an ability to understand maybe the way, right or wrong, the way that a professional environment exists and how it exists, like hierarchical things that no one has ever really trained on. It's hard to train on hierarchy. How's that fit in our culture model? Like, also, we have a hierarchy, but it is these unspoken rules of the professional world where you handle these types of things. And there was, over time, definitely a lack of understanding or just ability to sort of acknowledge, okay, this is a professional situation. So I can certainly see a need to say, we've got to teach them how to not just be lawyers, but work in a professional atmosphere. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of the things that you talked about, if this sounds like an accurate description, is professional identity formation is about how to do law. I mean, the law school traditionally is to understand the law, but then professional identity formation is, okay, now what do I do with it? And how do I function in the profession? And then, like you said, the soft skills, how do I go take that knowledge, that learning asset that I have, and then how do I go, make that a useful part of my life and the life, the lives of others around us. From my experiences at other firms before I started forming law, working with a lot of really bright people, I think a lot of more experienced attorneys that have learned a lot of those things, been trained to do a lot of those things, and were still in private practice because they were either naturally good at some of those things. But then a lot of people coming in, they just didn't have the soft skills or, weren't quite ready for it. I think, like you mentioned, one, like time management. I think there's a lot of people that have survived and had successful legal careers while being absolutely awful at time management, because lawyers as a class are almost uniformly bad at time management. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Yeah, it is certainly a weakness I've identified beyond just myself. But I think, the profession itself lends it to you take on so much and you're like, I don't know, I'm so busy that I have.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think that's just a function of workload, or do you think it's the type of person who becomes a lawyer?
I think both.
Yeah. No, I think that our business models and our firm cultures, and then also the type of people that come into practice, have this desire to satisfy other people, to go create value for other people, or, to, be people pleasers, or do, try to rise to the top by being able to perform, the most billable hours and everything else. And, I think in the process, people take on so much, and there's not been a skill that's been taught about, hey, here's how you understand what you're actually capable of doing and doing really well. And here's how you think through, okay, here's how much margin I might need in my day if I already know that I've got work that's going to take me about 6 hours to complete. That's not realistic. I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to track out every day, hey, if I've got 5 hours of committed, billable work, that might even be too much because I'm going to have other stuff. And then inevitably, because of how I am and how I estimate things, I'm going to guess wrong on at least one or two of those. And a 1 hour project is going to be 2 hours and 24 minutes and so on.
Well,
but
that's a great point. And we are also, oftentimes people are joining an environment where they have some sort of billable model, or time is
right.
a different entity than you're used to it being. Right. So that is a totally new thing to have to adjust to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and 8 hours in a day is not 8 hours in a billable day. 8 hours in a day is, depending on who you are, but for me, it was never 8 hours. I know people who go into work, sit down, bill for 8 hours, they go home. And I thought it was magical, but it just.
Yeah, can't imagine.
Yeah, no,
Unicorns.
I don't even have the attention span for that kind of thing. That's just not me. I think what I'm so curious about as you work on this, especially with law students who, at least in my experience, when 1Ls and 2Ls and would come and intern at the firm, a lot of them were just very bright-eyed and just very hungry to, learn about the profession and get real life experience and work on real matters. And I remember feeling that way because, despite what Jordan says, it was not very long ago that we were in law school. And I remember feeling that way.
Like, I just perspective.
I just want to work on real legal stuff. This hypothetical law school world isn't real, and I want to work on real legal stuff. And I'm curious because part of this professional identity formation, as far as I understand it, is what works for each. It's individualized to a degree of how can you be your authentic self and mesh that with your professional identity. How can you manage both this professional career that you want while being authentic to yourself. And I wonder, in your experience, if that it can be hard to explain that or get to that on an individualized level with these young lawyers, or whether they're got it way figured out before the rest of us did.
Well, that's one of the big challenges, right? Is like you mentioned earlier, part of it is there's certain professional standards that we want to make sure everyone meets when they're in this environment. And so part of it is like understanding what already exists and to some extent fitting in.
Yeah.
But the bigger goal from my perspective is the authenticity piece and the figuring out what is actually important to you and where you're going to be most comfortable and happy and feel fulfilled. And that's something that's totally individualized and can be in direct conflict with this idea of like fitting into this culture of whatever environment you're in. So that is something that we are always sort of balancing. And I think current law students are a little bit different in a good way, in that they are less willing to make some sacrifices or maybe adjust to other people's expectations in a way that is different from certainly, I think, when you and I were in law school.
Yeah.
How do you see firms responding to that dynamic?
It's tough.
Man, that was a content rich pause there.
Well,
it is.
Well,
yeah.
Firms can only run with associates, right? Associates are making money for the firm. So you have to meet people where they are to some extent. And also firms have a lot of leverage. And so they can hire people. They will find people to do the work that they have. I think some firms are excited to have people who are more independent thinkers or sort of have their own individual lives. And I think that there's also some resistance and a sense of like, well, this is the job. You get paid a lot of money to sign up to do things our way. And as a person in the law school, I find it all super, super interesting, and I don't really have skin in the game. I do think that it could get to a point where something in the big law model has to change. Because I will say, one trend that I have seen at KU is that there's not the inevitable funnel of law students always wanting to go to certain high status big law firms. It is not inevitable that is like a first choice for people anymore. And I think that used to be more true. And now we have a lot of people who are very successful in law school who have a lot of options, and they're saying, well, I don't want to do that. But that actually doesn't sound like a good fit for me. And it's I think causing some changes.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a positive development. We've talked a number of times here on the podcast about the mental health epidemic that our industry is experiencing. And I can't help but see, at least in my own life, and I think in the lives of a lot of people that have experienced mental health issues in the law, just how much not knowing yourself and not setting boundaries in such a high pressure industry, or at least what can become such a high pressure occupation, just how damaging that can be. And so I think it's a really healthy thing for anybody, but especially for lawyers, to know, who they are and what they want, or at least have some tools to help them figure that out and understand what that looks like in a legal career. so that then they can put in place the right boundaries, set the right expectations, optimize their experience, and be able to do it in a more intentional and purposeful way, I think, than I did, and certainly than some others have done. Because I think a lot of people go in and they just come out trying to become, the reflection of what other people expect of them. I mean, it's not even their identity anymore. It's, hey, this is what, people expect me to do, so I'm going to go to law school. This is how people expect me to perform. So this is how I'm going to be in, this is, the worker I'm going to be. This is what my boss expects from me. The managing partner expects from me. This is what my clients expect from me. And then pretty soon it's like, who are you? You're just, this amalgamation of the images that others have projected on you. And you don't even really know how to parse that out. And then you get in high pressure situations, and then you get into all of these, issues that we've talked about and others have talked about at length. And I think that, people try to figure out and be better equipped to know, like, hey, who are you and what do you want to do? And then
you totally nailed it. And a lot of the PIF stuff we talk about, look, it's not rocket science.
I believe the term is rocket surgery.
It's not rocket surgery.
It occurs to people at some point, but it might not be till you're 5 years in or 10 years in or 20 years into your career. And so we are hoping to have those internal self-assessments and self-reflections earlier in people's careers. I mean, I am someone like, I had the big law experience, and I am not anti-big law at all. I had a great time and would do it all over again. But I was certainly someone who kind of got on a path and then just was reacting to external stimuli and external validation, and was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess that's the next thing I'll do. And I want people to be intentional about their choices. So if that's the path that actually makes you feel great, then that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I want law students to have more ownership and intentionality while they're still in law school.
Yeah.
I think there's so much value in that, because I think that the point at which people have that realization that, that they are separate from their firm. I know that may sound silly, but that they have an identity separate from their firm, separate from, their career as an attorney. It allows them to engage in that process, I think, much more intentionally and more as an observer and less as somebody who, I feel like that scene from The Matrix where he wakes up and realizes what's been going on around him. And it's like, oh, this is what is really going on. And that's not an experience that you want people to have with respect to their careers, to wake up, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 30 years into their career going like, oh man, this wasn't at all what I wanted. And the worst thing, I think, is not even this isn't what I wanted, but people are really struggling with like who am I and what do I actually want?
I think even like speaking personally, I, like Jordan, sort of was just, I went to law school. I didn't have like an ideal sort of like, I'm going to law school because I want to do X. I was just like, this is something that I'll do. And then I did it. And then my grades were good enough that, they're like, well, now you should interview at law firms. And I was like, okay. And then I interviewed at law firms, like, well, you got a job at one. I'm like, okay, I'll do that then. And so I kind of just followed along and was gracious at the opportunity to even just have a job. And I remember sitting with an HR employee at the firm, speaking of like teaching people how to be professionals. And she was like, well, how do you want your benefits handled? And I was like, what's a benefit? And I'm, a grown adult with a doctorate degree and I'm, have graduated law school, getting ready to practice law and advise clients. And I'm like, benefits? And she's like, yeah, like your health insurance. I'm like, you pay my health insurance? So truly, I had no experience to draw from in the professional world other than sort of these moments. And then I work and immediately try to fit in. And it just, not for any other reason than I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I follow this path. This is the path I'm on. Oh God, keep hitting the microphone. No, don't apologize. You didn't do it.
We're not insured for that.
I know.
In fact, our our podcast isn't insured.
At
Nobody
all.
sue us, please. Thank you.
We don't have any money, so you go ahead. Don't go ahead. Anyway, it wasn't until, I had that moment myself where I feel like I had to wait to get capital at the firm to start to be who I truly was, right? If I had a high enough production, if my numbers were high enough, if the clients I brought into the firm, if I was doing enough on behalf of the firm, then I could start to show the authentic pieces of myself that maybe challenged the norm or was different. And then, one day I just was like, whoa, this isn't aligning for me anymore. And it's not personal. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with me. It just is no longer aligning. And I think having that conversation early, figuring out who you want to be in this career and the type of person you want to be and the type of environment that you want to work in that you can thrive in and be your authentic self is powerful. Because again, fortunately for me, I figured it out early enough along that I could make a change and make it happen. But I can't imagine doing it for so long and then being like, oops, that's not what I meant to happen. It's powerful.
I'm curious, were you like assessing your experience as you were going? Or were you like conscious of, well, this doesn't align with my values, or here's a place where I'm not being authentically myself? Were you cognizant of that as it was happening?
For a while, no. I was just so grateful to be employed that I truly couldn't look out. Like I'm wanted so badly to be good. I needed affirmation that I was going to be a good lawyer. And like, I knew I was a good student. Obviously, my grades were fine and I passed the bar. And so I kept setting these expectations. Like, I just need someone to tell me I'm going to be a good lawyer because I'm not sure that I am. And so I was so focused on being that it kind of shut off for a little bit. And then as I started, I got older and I had all these other experiences come in, and I started to be more aware of it and think, okay, well, maybe, once I'm a partner, I can have colorful hair or I can introduce this idea of flexible work schedules or whatever it was going to be that I thought might align more with a workplace that I wanted to work in, or talking about mental health at work, which was a big one for me. Maybe once I have enough capital and people think that I have value in this other space, that I'll be able to bring that to the table. So I was aware of it, not as early on as I'd like to be, or I wish I would have been. But once I figured it out, again, it wasn't, I think what the profession has this way of making us feel like if we leave a job in this industry, maybe it's others too, but if we leave a job, then we're like, how dare you? Like, bankers leave jobs like it's nothing. If bankers are like, I'm a VP over here. Nope, now I'm a VP over there.
15 bankers in Wichita have relocated since this podcast recording started.
Right. But in law firms, we're like, no. At least in Wichita, it is very much like you stay at a law firm and you work there for the rest of your life. And so when you leave, it's kind of a hard thing to do, but, and people don't love it or react well to it. But so that's a long-winded way of answering your question. I became more and more aware of it and would try to adjust or course correct. And then when I got tired of trying to course correct, I was like, well, I'm going to go try something else, which has been super fun and challenging in its own way. But
yeah, that's relatable. I think so many of us are neurotic people pleasers, and I'm an Enneagram 3, so I look for a gold star. Are you also an Enneagram 3?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Also a neurotic people pleaser. So go on.
It must be the Topeka thing.
In good company. So in many ways, that environment was a great fit for me.
Yeah.
And I think I could have gone along with it. But it got to a point where sort of my personal life circumstances were changing, and I had I think my values were evolving.
Yep.
And it got to a point where I did take a beat to think about, well, is this actually how I want to be spending my wild and precious life?
Yeah.
Quote.
I really like how you described that. You had to take a moment to really think about it. And I don't think I've ever been good at taking a moment. Like, I really don't, especially when it comes to thinking about like, hey, who am I? Do I like who I am? How do I feel about, myself, my relationship with myself and my relationship with others? At times I think I've probably done that, but it's hard. And then you take somebody who's wired like we are and you put them into this profession where time is the means of exchange. I mean, this is like how you get ahead. This is how you get status. This is how you demonstrate your worth is you go and you take as much time as you possibly can. It is the fungible commodity that you use to, acquire status, advance your career, make money, everything else, which just squeezes every last drop of time that you can possibly give to it out. And then you add to that just the constant, cortisol rush of reacting to urgent and important things. And there's just no space left. And so if you go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, if you go into that, not really knowing who you are and what you want, not having a professional identity already cemented, or at least being aware that one exists and that you need to figure out what it is if you're going to be a well-adjusted person that you like at the end of the day. Good luck finding it along the way without a moment of crisis, which I think is probably, what happened to me, but go on.
Certainly the legal profession is like that. And 1L, 2L, 3L law school is also like that.
Yeah.
If you do not intentionally carve out time, it is just a series of go, 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 go. You have so much to do, and that fills all of the available time. So one of the things that we are trying to do in the law school is create pockets of time where we are asking students to do that self-assessment and self-reflection. Some people are really into it and it comes really naturally to them.
I would not have been one of those people.
Some people, love, I love a bullet journal. I love a personality quiz. I am all about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of people have no interest in it. And it is uncomfortable to do. But it is, I think, essential to actually figuring out what is important to you and how you want to spend your time. And doing that exercise is a skill, just like anything else.
Mm. Well,
we have our students.
Oh, no, go ahead, Jordan.
As I say, we have our students, our first PIF exercise is a values assessment. So not to put you on the spot, but could you identify your top 5 values?
Yes.
We're going to need, Jason, you're going to need to cut out the next 5 minutes while I think. You go first, Ashlyn.
Okay.
We're only allowed 5?
I can, my top 5. I don't even know if I have 5.
Will we be graded on this? Is it open book?
You cannot get an A.
This is for good faith effort.
Okay.
You don't have to write them down.
Am I prohibited from writing them
You
down?
can if you want. Right. It's totally acceptable. Right. My top values are my family, my faith, our combined health, mental and physical wellness of all of those people that I'm in charge of. And then putting something, and I don't know how to say it, but doing something, giving something good back to the world, creating something good. Those are the things that I probably spend the most of my time thinking about, making sure I'm going to do those things well or prioritize. Did I say faith? Did I say that in there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Yeah,
thank you.
That was really good.
I've spent a significant amount of time overanalyzing whether I've done any of those things well because, I'm neurotic. So I was just prepared for this test. What about you? What are your values? Tell me them.
Yeah. I have a really hard time with list of top things. So
in no particular order.
In no particular order. And also I'm going to loosely interpret 5 as the number of values that I feel like, because as a lawyer, I'm not required to know how to count.
Okay.
So
we'll be here for 45 more minutes or go. Sorry.
I was stalling for time, but thank you. No. So personal values, family is at the top of the list for me. I mean, that's kind of what really drives things for me. I think organization has become really, really important for me. Margin, at this stage of my life is one of my core values. Those 3. And then I think one that has sort of risen to the top recently is authenticity. As a recovering people pleaser, I am painfully aware of how little I know myself, because of how much I've chosen to value myself based on what I think other people want from me. And fun. Honestly, fun is a really important part of my life. And so yeah, that's currently one of my top values. So those are
great.
5. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we asked law students to actually we give them a list to start from, which didn't give you guys, but I figured you could do the exercise regardless.
We winged it. Yay! I feel like and this is truly pure transparency here, just between the 3 of us and whoever is listening.
Transparency, but not confidentiality. Go on.
Correct. If you would have asked me in law school, when I entered law school as a 1L, what my value, I mean, I had a husband who clearly I love very much and probably would have ranked him up there pretty high, but my values were different than they are now. And I think you mentioned sort of the evolution, knowing, even just giving people permission to say, this is who you are now and this is what you value now. And it's okay if 5, 10, however many years from now, as long as you're checking in with yourself, that those values shift and change. Because at the top of my list when I graduated or was in law school would have been finances, money. I want to feel secure. I want to pay back my loans. I want to feel like I can afford. I mean, I've been going to school for so many years. I just want to have a life that I can, buy Starbucks when I want. And that was and frankly, finances, being able to provide is still pretty high up on my list. And I think you can I think it's okay to recognize that too, that, it's okay to want to say, I'd also like to make a serious chunk of change. Be important. It would have been important to me in law school. It's important to me now. So totally.
My values were totally different in law school. And I would have said definitely money, status, prestige, all of that stuff I was like single-minded focus on achievement in law school. And in some ways that was authentic to how my circumstances and what was most important to me. And also I could feel myself in certain scenarios, kind of veering off the path of other values, like I would say authenticity and connection are 2 of my core values.
Yeah.
And I think law school at times brought out like a side of me that wasn't aligned with that. And so having those not always at the forefront, but at least knowing that was at my core, what I cared about the most, helped me, I think, get back on track sometimes during stressful periods of that experience.
Well, it sounds like this is a muscle, right? This work is like anything else, that if you aren't taught how to use it, aren't taught how to be introspective enough to figure out what your values are at different stages of your life, then it can just smack you right in the face. And then you might be in a moment of crisis, as opposed to having the opportunity in law school when you're young and your mind is molding around all of these other things, to also at the forefront of your mind be asking yourself, does this align with my professional identity? Is this what I'm looking for? And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, okay, we'll try it out. But at least I'm aware of the situations that I'm in, as opposed to just, I've fallen blindly along.
I'm really curious what you both think of this thought. Do you feel like, not just in the legal profession, although I think it's most acute there, but just as a society as a whole, do you think we've programmed ourselves to view the scarcity of space as a sign of success?
What do you mean scarcity of space?
Like, I think about like professional identity formation. Who am I? Like, just kind of that fundamental question: who am I? What am I doing here? Where am I going? And like I don't feel like people are getting exposure to that, or at least I'm not aware of it in high school. I don't feel like it's happening a lot in college. I definitely wasn't part of my law school experience. And I'm curious, like, I don't remember thinking about like creating space to just understand myself, engage in some of the topics that we have here as being a positive. I think so much of what was constantly being inundated with was, how quickly can you get through undergrad? How, fast can you do this? How well can you do this? Which, by the way, requires taking this extra time to study. And so constantly taking that limited box of time that we have and cramming as many things as possible into it. As a result, there's no space.
Yeah.
And if you had space, it would mean that as a lawyer, for example, that you had billed less hours, which would have meant that you were worth less or you had achieved less. You had exchanged those tokens for, fewer opportunities and, less status, less advancement. And I feel like there's just that constant, like, people aren't viewing the presence of space or margin in life as something that's healthy or worthy of pursuit. It's all like, how much more can I get out of this day?
Yeah. And Ashley and I went to law school during the height of what I would call girl boss culture and sort of that lean in and hustle and achieve. That's what it means to be like a modern woman.
Yeah.
And I certainly felt that pressure.
Yeah.
And now I think of it totally differently. And to me, time is the highest currency. And that is that having like the freedom and the control over my own time is top priority for me. And that is what I have deemed to be success at this stage.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
No, I think you're right. That was, there was a lot of pressure to be a girl boss and to, what that meant for a bunch of different people, but it always just felt like you had to grind. Like, I just remember thinking like, it's a grind. It's a grind. It's a grind. And I'm like, I don't even want to. It turns out I'm not a very good grinder. I'm tired. And so I like the space that we're creating or trying to create. And I think starting at law school is so fundamentally important to say, hey, you've got to create space to think about what you want. And not, if you ask me again, when I was a 1L, what I wanted out of this life, my answer would be different. But just teaching people how to look at themselves, the answers can change. That's the best part, is that there's an evolution. I have one more question for you, Jordan, before I have the final question for you. And that is, what do you think happens if we don't focus on this work, if we don't teach the human side of the practice of law, the practical side of how to be a lawyer? What do you think happens if we just ignore it and do what we've always done?
One thing that happens is that people get left behind who are otherwise totally competent to be lawyers, but they never got access to sort of this hidden curriculum. It's just a reality that some people have the advantage of knowing how the norms of law school work or of the lawyer or the legal profession work. So if you, for example, grow up around lawyers, you might know the custom of calling judges judge instead of by their first name. But why would everyone know that if you're not around lawyers or judges?
Right.
Or if you grow up around lawyers or other types of like certain professionals, like you might know how to send a professional email, or how to do a job interview and what is appropriate behavior. But lots of people don't get exposed to those norms organically, and yet they can totally be great lawyers, but they are at a disadvantage if we don't make some of this stuff more transparent.
Yeah.
Also, we risk sending a bunch of new lawyers into the world who are going to be either, I think, unsuccessful, however you want to define that, or misaligned with their skills and their values.
Yeah.
And I think that's just as big of a problem. We want to prepare people for the long game. So
Right.
when we talk
Mhm.
about space and time and not hustling to the extreme, everyone knows that this profession is rigorous, and no one is denying that. And everyone who wants to be a lawyer, I think, is signing up for hard work. But if we want to prepare people for years of fulfilled practice, then we need to set people up better on the front end.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad that the ABA could scoot things along and make it a requirement of law schools so that at least, maybe you have to spend less of your time convincing that it needs to be done and more time work. So thank you for working in that space, Jordan. I'm sure it can be trying at times. Okay.
It's really fun. It's
I love
exciting.
that.
It's
I love
it's
that.
definitely different than other stuff that we have traditionally done.
Yeah.
Cool. And we're getting more and more people to buy in.
It sounds
love it.
useful.
I can just
That's
picture
a dig at parts of law school, by the way. If anybody's wondering.
Well, I teach legal research and writing, and I know that no one thinks that is anything, but
That
Sure.
is perhaps the most useful class
Yeah,
for whatever it's worth.
at this point
And
in
I'm
my
not
career.
just saying that so
yeah,
that
say it again louder.
yeah, it's the best class ever.
I'm sorry. I thought the requirement that I take criminal law really served me well in my entire legal career, where I've never worked on a crime. Worked on behalf of a crime committer. How do you say it?
An accused defendant.
Thank you. See, I've never done that. So
Yeah, I don't practice criminal law. That's probably
Okay,
the wrong
well, as someone
terminology.
who also has never done anything
Mhm.
criminal law related, I will say criminal procedure, I think, is the single most useful class that every law student and every American human should take. We should know our rights.
I totally agree with that. I should know my rights. I don't even think I took criminal procedure. Did we? Did they make us take that? I took criminal law. I took civil procedure, but yeah, I had no idea what my rights are. So you're totally right. That would be.
I only remember criminal procedure because of the grade I got in it. We won't get into that.
I often want to say that it's against the Constitution, so maybe I should learn more about that. I did have to argue in court once that something was against the Constitution in civil court. So Okay.
The Constitution also important.
Just small details. Remember when we first got to law school, didn't they give us a Constitution?
Oh yeah,
They still do that? I don't know if I have that. Oh, final question for you, Jordan, before we wrap up here on this topic. And I'm going to let Sam ask it because he always asks this question about better law so eloquently.
Oh, no pressure.
Yeah. So do it good or else.
Yeah. Will I be fired? Will I be released?
No, you can't be fired.
Okay. Will I be liberated? All right. Thank you. So Jordan, one of the things we talk a lot about on the podcast is what's broken about the law, and in particular, the traditional approach to the law. And we're convinced that it's not enough to just say, hey, here's a problem with the way things are. We really want to be a constructive part of the conversation around what things could be. And we want to really help our audience come up with terminology and ideas around what that something else could be. The term that we're using is better law. And so what we've started asking our guests is, if there's one thing that you'd really like to see be a part of this ideal of better law, what would that be?
I want to see fully funded professional identity formation curricula in all law schools.
Love that. To take it a step further, what impact do you think that will ultimately have to make law better?
So I referred to this Delta model briefly earlier, and this is a framework that was developed by law professors and lawyers. And it basically is the idea that to be a competent lawyer, you need to have the practice skills and the process skills and the people skills. And in law school, we do a good job at the practice. I mean, that is sort of substantively, right? Knowing and communicating the law. And we need to do a much better job, in my opinion, of talking about the process, like how to deliver these services effectively and efficiently. How do you manage yourself, and how do you operate in a business, right? Like, think about how many lawyers don't know anything about business, and you are in a business.
Most of them.
Yeah, majority of them.
Yeah. And then the third piece being the people, understanding ourselves, understanding colleagues, understanding clients. So I think better law looks like acknowledging that all three pieces are essential, and we can train law students on all three, and then we can reward and support all three of those skill sets during practice also.
Yeah, agree.
Good stuff.
It is. Hey, Jordan, thank you for being here and chatting about this with us.
My pleasure.
Oh, yay. Thank you, listener, for being here and listening to us.
It's listeners, plural. There's more than one.
Thank you, singular listener. Mom.
It's not just my mom.
We made the same joke.
And my mom.
And Jordan's mom.
To all of our mothers who are listening, thank you.
Bless a loyal mom.
Please share it with all of your neighbor friends.
We love a loyal mom. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough and showing up. And if you found this content helpful or useful, or you just liked it and think that we're funny, which I think could be true, as my almost 6-year-old says, like and subscribe. He says it on things that you would never even know. I'm like, did you like dinner? And he's like, yeah, like and subscribe. I'm like, okay. Thank you, son.
That's awesome.
So please leave reviews or comments, unless you're going to be mean. Then send us direct messages.
I don't want to hear it. Via the U.S. Postal Service.
Smoke signals is the only way I accept my criticism. So, okay.
But no arson. Thank you.